Hello, GM, everyone. Thank you for the clap, Mac. Welcome back to another episode of Overpriced JPEGs. It is weekly recap time where we talk about all the things happening in the NFT metaverse industry this week. And I am joined by a special guest to help me do this wrap up. I'm joined by Mack Flavelle, the founder of Big Head Club and friend of the pod. You've been on the show a couple times, Mac. So thanks for coming back.
Well, I keep coming back because it's always awesome. Thank you.
Love it. We love to hear that. So we're going to dive into a whole bunch of things. And we got to talk about Otherside Meta. That test happened on Saturday. So lots of thoughts there. GameStop launched their marketplace, their like NFT digital marketplace. I have big thoughts here. I think people are sleeping on this. They don't realize how big this is. So excited to talk about that. There's been some hacks in the industry we got to talk about and other news that we'll get into. But before we dive into any of this, we do need to hear a word from our lovely, lovely sponsors.
There is a brand new staking feature in the Ledger Live app today. We all like staking the assets that we're bullish on, and now you can stake 7 different coins inside the Ledger Live app. Cosmos, Polkadot, Tron, Algorand, Tezos, Solana, and of course, Ethereum. With Ledger Live, you can take money from your bank account, buy your most bullish crypto asset, and stake that asset to its network, all inside the Ledger Live app. Through a partnership with Figment, Ledger also lets you choose which validator you want to stake your assets with. And Ledger is running its own validating nodes, offering a convenient way to participate in network validation, and it even comes with slashing insurance. Ledger Live is truly becoming the battle station for the bankless world, so go download Ledger Live. If you have a Ledger already, you probably already have it, and get started securely staking your crypto assets.
MetaMask is the leading Web3 wallet to get you access to everything you need in Web3. If you're just getting started on your NFT journey, you need MetaMask. And if you need to fund your MetaMask account in order to buy that NFT that you've been eyeing, well, now you can do that directly through MetaMask. Just click the blue buy button on the home screen. Personally, I'm mad that I've spent extra gas fees transferring money from Coinbase to MetaMask in order to buy NFTs. I've been using MetaMask directly, and it is so much better. You can also buy stable coins and native tokens from Ethereum, Polygon, Avalanche, CeeLo, and others, and you can do it directly with your debit card, your credit card, through Apple Pay or Google Pay. And there is now an improved buying experience on MetaMask Mobile. You'll only see tokens that are in your region, so it's personalized to you, and you'll get real-time quotes, so you know you're always getting the best deal. If you haven't downloaded MetaMask yet, what are you waiting for? Go try it out. You can learn more about buying cryptocurrencies with MetaMask at metamask.io/buy-crypto. Okay. Otherside Meta. This test happened on Saturday. About 4,500 people entered Otherside, which is Bored Ape Yacht Club, Yuga Labs Metaverse. Initial thoughts, Mac, or do you want to give context for folks? Do you want me to set up some context? I want to hear what you think.
So I think a couple of things. One, I have like an allergic reaction to when we say so-and-so apostrophe S proprietary metaverse. In my opinion, every time that we have to say somebody's metaverse, we should actually replace the word metaverse with miniverse. Because if it's your metaverse, then you miss the entire fucking point of the metaverse. And so all these different contenders were like, we're building the metaverse. If you're like, oh, right. Everybody should extend the world that you're building. Everybody should play in your sandbox because that's true decentralization. You're missing the point. So I have this whole thing about like metaverses, and there is no such thing as metaverses plural. There is going to be a metaverse or not, but a multitude of metaverses means that the metaverse failed in the first place. Then we're just sitting on a 3D website. Then we're just at like Disney.com or Facebook.com with 3D models, and that is not the metaverse.
So that's really interesting. Obviously, so what you're painting a picture of is this interoperable world where there's maybe different worlds and communities within it, but you're bouncing from one to the other, and that's actually what a metaverse is. That's the metaverse we want. So, but everything has to start then with these worlds. So it's not a critique of the fact that Yuga Labs is building the current Yuga Labs miniverse. It's just like, let's be honest about what it is. And they're building a miniverse, and their vision, my understanding is for it to connect to a broader metaverse and maybe even dominate in terms of having the most volume of users and transactions and whatever within their miniverse in the broader metaverse. Is that a good summary?
All yes, except not except, but let's quote our friend Kai, who we both know. I was talking to him.
Love Kai Turner. Love me some Kai Turner.
Yeah, I think it's impossible not to. He's one of the good ones. And he wrote the tweet yesterday that said something like, I'm paraphrasing, but stop inventing metaverses and start inventing standards. And that's
Interoperable.
really
Wasn't it start inventing interoperability standards?
Yes. Probably because, and like I think from what I understand, Yuga does have this vision. Like it's not like I'm some brilliant prophet who sees this and they don't. They are thinking about interoperability, but everybody I know who thinks about interoperability thinks you should be interoperable with my thing. You should extend my thing. Nobody's ever like, okay, we're going to build on that other thing. When somebody goes and says, we're just going to build, and like, they are, Yuga Labs. They have $450 million plus the apes to get started with. So I understand that they're not necessarily going to go build on top of crypto voxels. They do have a market presence and dominance that suggests they get to be the kernel of future interoperability, that these other things should grow out of the momentum that they build. But it's still, I still feel like what they built looked incredible, but it looked like Fortnite. It didn't look like something really interoperable. It's a tech demo, probably being too judgy too early, and I should just like shut up and let them do their thing. I just hope everybody read Kai's tweet. I hope everybody's really thinking about interoperable standards and not just destination websites.
So I think I want to provide some context here, and I want to dig deeper on what building interoperability standards would look like, or if you think there's something else that Yuga should be doing once I give you a little bit more context. But let me just frame this up, just in case people have been under a rock. Obviously, I don't know, however many months ago it was at this point, Yuga Labs came out and said, hey, basically we're building a metaverse. They had this leaked pitch deck that I'm assuming they intentionally leaked, though there were some typos in there. So, wish they'd done a little spell check before they leaked this document, but it's all right. And it said they're building what they were calling a meta RPG. And they were basically like, hey, existing metaverses are kind of boring and kind of suck. And the thing that brings people together are games. And we want to have this awesome meta RPG where people can be building arcade games in one section, and maybe they're building other kind of games over in another section, and then it all links up together and blah, blah, blah. And wouldn't that be lovely? So as we've gotten more clarity on what this is, it looks like right now they're in what they've said is that this is like an 11-part narrative game that they're currently building out that they're building in the open so that they can have their users testing and inputting on it throughout the process. So what happened on Saturday was the first of this 11-part narrative series where it's just like this very initial kind of performance test for them to test out certain elements of what they're building out. And then it had a little bit of a story component to it, these codas, whatever. And there are going to be 10 more of these that will allow people to test out different parts of what they're ultimately building, and that will further this overall story. And it sounds like what is going to be tested are like essentially like the Otherside development kits, their software development kits, different things like that. So they can that will shape sort of what this world looks like. Okay. I like the building in public thing. I think that's cool. I think clearly people were very impressed by how smooth the gameplay experience was. And like the game itself is nothing, right? This game, you just like attacked a coda by hitting spacebar. Like there's no game to this yet, right? So I would say like, let's not overstate how, like, I feel like Yuga gets a lot of like hype for just like executing, and it's like, well, okay, like what has been so strategically brilliant here? Like I'm not sure yet, but I do think clearly the experience was really impressive. Now, this is going to get me to what you were saying with the interoperability standard thing. This is built on the M² network. And this is the technology being developed by Improbable. Improbable is Yuga's partner in building this metaverse, miniverse, whatever I should more appropriately call it. Improbable is a British metaverse company, and they have had this technology. Like they've been bragging appropriately or whatever about this technology for a little while, of like, there's Morpheus, which is part of M², whatever, like that basically they can have 10,000 users congruently on a network and have it be really smooth and seamless. So it feels a little bit like Yuga just threw a bunch of money at this company that had this technology and now is benefiting from it. So again, this wasn't like Yuga themselves hired a bunch of devs and built out the most incredible experience. Now they've picked a great partner, so that's awesome. But M², the network, is, I believe, I don't want to say open source because I think that might be overstating it, but let me see what I have here. It says Improbable will develop Otherside on the M² network, creating an open metaverse on which the community can build and own unique characters and experiences. Like, my sense is that M², this foundational technology, is supposed to be wired for interoperability and for other games, but maybe it's only for things that are on the M² network.
I don't think that I'm uniquely insightful in thinking these like open, permissionless, sort of standards-driven metaverse is a good idea. And so M² looks really impressive. I was trying to figure out how they raised so much money. Like, I think they've raised $500 million for a company that nobody's heard of in the like consumer internet world. Improbable, yeah. But they've done a bunch of military sims, which I always find slightly odd. Like, just uncomfortable wargaming is basically how they seem to have been not funding themselves, but proving that their technology works well. I mean, to be honest, like, I'm just a little bit salty and a little bit shitty and probably a little bit jealous. And I'm always like, oh, maybe Yuga's going to fuck something up. And like, I wouldn't point and laugh, but I might chuckle under my breath. And yet I think they nailed this. They did. Yeah. To your point, like, they don't need to build these things. They need to deliver these things. And if you deliver them by hiring, then that's great. What they put together is not a great game. It wasn't supposed to be. It's a great tech demo, it looked like, and it looked amazing. The voice chat, all the people hopping around. I was like, oh, like, again, I wouldn't have been sad if they'd fucked it up, but I will not take it away from them.
Okay. See, and I feel like I don't own Yuga stuff, and again, I'm kind of critical.
I think Punk actually.
I own a Meebit. You're right, but not
whatever. Really
okay, sort of Yuga stuff, but like I don't own Bored Apes, and I think I can. Again, I think I think the jury is still out to what extent Yuga is supremely talented and to what extent they are supremely lucky. And any success story is a combination of both, and it's about what is the ratio of each. And maybe their great skill is finding amazing partners, and that is valid, right? Like, that's also talent and not just luck. This is all to tee up saying that, like, I can be a little bit of a Yuga skeptic. Like, I think Doodles has established themselves as a wildly talented team. I know you know that team super well, obviously. Like, and I would say that their success is more skill over luck. And Yuga, I don't even actually feel as confident in that. With that said, I want Yuga to succeed because they are such the front-facing company of this space that if they fail, when they have big mistakes, it sets the whole industry back. And so I'm definitely rooting for them from that standpoint, but also want to hold their feet to the fire. Is there something you think they could be doing differently instead of just trying to build their own kind of we want to get rich mini-verse? When you talk about building these interoperable standards, like, what would that look like? Should they be doing something different than what they're currently doing, in your opinion?
To be honest, I'm not sure. Like, I don't want them to just go build in Sandbox. That's definitely not. So I like your question because it's forcing me to think about my criticisms, and now I'm having trouble like saying, "Oh, they should be doing this." So yeah, like, I mean, maybe not. Maybe the tech demo, maybe figuring this stuff out, like really doing this. A thing that me and Kai have talked about is the idea of an alliance of projects. I like to call it the Purple Chip Alliance. And there's this whole concept around, there's a bunch of projects that aren't Doodles, aren't Yuga Labs, aren't Punks. Like, if you're not a top 5 blue chip whatever, and you're not a rug that's bleeding out on the floor, there's between 12 and 200 projects that have founders
kind of
that care.
Mid-cap projects.
Mid-cap projects, I call the Purple Chip Alliance because they're halfway between blue and red. And if they all came together, because, purple mixes blue and red, and if they all came together, it would be interesting. It might have been fun. And like, I mean, honestly, I'm just now being shitty old complaining guy, but it might have been cool to see some of the early Yuga Labs demos incorporating some other projects. Like right from the get-go, if you're a king and you step out on the balcony and you have a diplomat from every neighboring country, that projects a very different image than if you step out and everybody's wearing your shade of blue or whatever it is. And Yuga Labs is the king. Like, again, can't take that away from them. But I think I'm being unnecessarily critical. Like, they are doing a tech demo with interoperability with other projects. Like, that's not the first things they need to
and
prove.
they did let
know?
you pick your avatar that would show up above your head. So you, like, Kai did show up as his Meebit. You could show up as different things. And they have been pretty vocal in their like white papers and whatever, that the end goal here is that you can show up as any avatar you want. So I think I agree with your let's build these standards. And I think what I don't know is to what extent this is what you have to do to build those standards, is build a world and then have it be interoperable, which is why I bring up M squared, because I want to interview Improbable and learn and understand it better. Because if that is, for example, a great standard upon which an interoperable metaverse can be built, then I'd say they're actually doing it. So I think we can, I think you and I are both a little bit Yuga skeptics, but I think this has clearly been a win, and I think they may be doing it right, actually, from the interoperability standpoint.
It's also worth pointing out, like, just sort of trying to be critical of my own line of thinking before. I mean, I always tell people, oh, I was the kitty part of CryptoKitties, not the crypto part. And I was the problem, not the answer. Dieter wrote the answer. The answer was the 721 standard. The problem was, how do we make cats fuck on the blockchain? And it was Dieter who said we should make a standard, right? Like, we could have made CryptoKitties in such a way that CryptoKitties bred with CryptoKitties, and that was that. There didn't have to be a standard where we extended that and made that possible. We could have made a game. And many people, including me, probably would have just made a game and be like, oh, look, we made millions of dollars. It would not have affected our revenue. We were white hot, not because we created a standard, but because we created a fun and compelling play experience. Because Dieter, and probably Roham, but definitely Dieter, insisted that that be a standard, we all now have 721s and NFTs and blah, 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 blah. And so the point is, though, that, like, if we had just released a standard and been like, hey, look, this is technically interesting and this is innovative and this is pushing the envelope, exactly zero people would have cared.
Yeah.
What we said was, we just made millions of fucking dollars and we use this piece of code, we use this technology to do that. You too can do that. And it is that economic alignment, a fancy word for greed, that compelled a bunch of other people to start playing with the 721. And so you could argue that even outside of technology, from a cultural perspective, in order to be the carrot that draws adoption to the standard, Yuga Labs needs to demonstrate wild success, financial success on their platform. And only in being Prometheus in that way and showing us the way, pulling down that fire, will all the other people say, oh man, we should do that. Like, yeah, we're not doing this because it's interesting. We're doing this because we're greedy. Greed is a hell of a motivator. So maybe they're making exactly the right moves, assuming they managed to make a bunch of money off the other side, which they already did on the land sales, but like doing the in-app, in-world stuff.
So this gets me to actually what I have been most critical about in this whole process, and what I remain critical about until I
prove it otherwise.
No more. Yeah. Which is the land sale piece. I have been very open on this podcast about feeling very mixed about land sales. And it appears that this is shaping up to be a world where they're heavily reliant on UGC and heavily reliant on the players themselves building out games and experiences that people want to be a part of. And so to limit your pool of creators to people who could afford Otherside or who were available at the drop time or whatever feels like a bad move. And I've said this before, so forgive my regular listeners, but like Roblox succeeded because anybody could come in. They built the network effects, and then the best whatever can rise to the top and people can love that and whatever. They have now out the gate set up this dynamic where they either make their landholders happy by making land super valuable because only landholders can do XYZ, only landholders can build da-da-da-da-da. But that comes at the expense then of the incredible contributor who couldn't afford it, who's not in there. Or you make your landholders mad by making it more accessible, by making it more inclusive. And now that devalues the uniqueness of the land or whatever, and now your landholders are mad. And starting this with that dynamic feels really weird and contrary to Web3. And my point with this all along, or my thoughts on this as they've evolved, has been, look, if Yuga literally needed the money, because this is such an expensive undertaking, and their venture capital, their whatever they've raised from Horowitz and blah, blah, like truly wasn't enough to fund this huge undertaking and everything else they wanted to do. So they needed the money. Okay, I can actually understand. Then you're accepting this trade-off you've established. But if they did this simply because, okay, we would love to have more money and we just haven't strategically big picture thought about this enough and are just doing this because this is how everyone else does it, that's what concerns me. And I don't know which the answer is. But I remain critical of that until I get more info.
Yeah, I don't know how one would argue that. Outside of, as you say, more information, like, this is not the real world. This is a programmed world, and so maybe every piece of land is actually going to be able to open up. It's like a Felix the Magic Cat's bag or Felix the Cat's magic bag, and inside there's way more room. And in fact, everybody else will be able to lend land to emerging creators from people who didn't have enough money. Like, there's all sorts of possible digital solutions.
Yes.
But as you say, with the information that we have, this is, well, though, let's hold a mirror up and look at our ugly selves. You say it's not very Web3 to sort of to be exclusive in that way. In fact, it's hyper Web3-ish. It may not be the ideals of Web3, but how many interesting things that have happened in blockchain in the last year, in Web3 in the last year, did not happen only to the economically privileged.
Yeah, you're
Goblins?
right.
This is, in fact, exactly the playbook, is to charge as much money as possible and then rant about egalitarianism and standards and accessibility while literally doing nothing to facilitate that, paying purely lip service. And this is not a criticism of Yuga Labs. We're all doing this. We all talk about how it's the great decentralization, but also it's a decentralization thing if you can afford 4 or 5 figures, 6 in some cases, to get involved.
Yeah, I think absolutely. And you're right. I need to check myself on that. Like, life is hierarchies, right? So it's a matter of which hierarchy do we want to prioritize, because you can prioritize money, or you can say, oh, Goblin Town. But okay, like Goblin Town itself, like if you have the time to be on Discord 24 hours a day, you're probably more likely to have found Goblin Town. And like, what does that mean? Like, it's which which trait, which characteristic are we optimizing for, and do we want to privilege? And money very often gets it, but any other construction also privileges something and creates a hierarchy. And anyway, we can get really deep on this, but I think that's a good point. Doesn't actually detract from this particular criticism. It just means that maybe I shouldn't phrase it like this is anti-Web3 because it's quintessential Web3. It's just, I don't think it was the right way to go, and I don't think it gets you the best product. The only other solution I'll throw out there, I interviewed a guy named Lance Doucette, who has studied land-like assets in games for like years, and like the history of it and how it always leads to recessions. It leads to everything we see in the real world. And one of the solutions for it is a land tax on people who aren't using the land productively, to prevent just squatters, like just buying the land as a speculator and then not building anything on it. Like, you have to pay a tax that I think actually it may be a tax that's universally applied, but if you're actually building productively on it, you should be making enough money that the tax is worth it. It's something like that. I'm not getting these specifics perfectly, but you get the concept, which still doesn't solve the problem of how do you get the best builders into your world and building in your world, but it does solve the problem of people just speculating and just sitting on land for speculative purposes. Okay. Let's move on. Speaking of metaverses and worlds, I do want to touch on what's happening with Minecraft and NFT Worlds. Have you been tracking this? Oh my God.
Yeah.
An evil laugh. Okay. Why don't we give, again, folks context very, very quick. Minecraft came out and said, to ensure that Minecraft players have a safe and inclusive experience, blockchain technologies are not permitted to be integrated inside our Minecraft client and server applications, nor may they be utilized to create NFTs. Basically, Minecraft is like, We have no plans of using the blockchain. In fact, we're going to ban blockchain technology from our servers. And maybe in the future, we'll do something with this, but not right now. NFT Worlds, which is a metaverse built on the Minecraft server, is obviously a victim of this, and NFT World plots have plummeted in value, and that's where we are. What are your thoughts?
My thoughts are that it is important to point out that Minecraft didn't do this in a vacuum. Microsoft Minecraft did this in a world where people were building on top. There was already a ton of money, I'm not sure how much, but a ton of money spent on NFT Worlds, a bunch of time spent by those developers. Like, this thing existed. Now, Microsoft owes them nothing, to be clear. And like, you know, the deep irony here is this is why we used to love blockchain, was because decentralization matters. So there is no platform risk. Like, probably most of your listeners know this, but the list of startups that are killed on Apple's fucking WWDC every year, like, somebody could make a website of bodies. There's graveyards that go on for days of literally businesses that get killed every time Google does I/O or Microsoft does their WWDC. They make all these announcements, and people are like, oh, I had this really cool app that I was working on, and we almost had $10 million in revenue this year, and it's a feature hanging off a pimple off of the side of the Apple OS now. And they just like wipe out businesses. They fucking slay people. And it sucks. It's also the nature of business and technology and innovation and such. I wait for you.
I had a conversation yesterday with Dato Yoshita. I'm so sorry, I'm forgetting your Twitter handle. He's great. You see him on Twitter all the time, and he helped give me some context on Otherside, and we were kind of chatting about it. He's a big gamer. And he was reminding me, which I guess I knew this, but I'd never fully tracked it. Like, you know, Ethereum was essentially created, Vitalik's talked about this several times, because he had a warlock or whatever in World of Warcraft that got so powerful that World of Warcraft stepped in and made him less powerful so that it wasn't so out of balance. And he was like, this is wrong. Like, this centralization is evil, and I need to create decentralization. So this is the origin of this whole ecosystem. Ethereum itself is gaming companies and centralized power, which is exactly what we're seeing here.
I mean, the most vicious of all companies to do this was Twitter. Twitter used to do a lot to convince developers to build on top of Twitter and then turn off the API. They had like the Twitter app that we know now, I think, was based off TweetDeck. That was the one that they bought. And that's fine, except that there becomes this like disingenuity problem. They spent months or years, more like years, telling people, build on top of Twitter. We want a developer ecosystem. This is a standard almost. This is a platform. This is a technology. Build on top of it. And then, oh, hey, we're going to buy one of you and dead the rest of you. So the Microsoft thing, I mean, again, like, they get to do this. Apple gets to do this. You build the platform, then you get to make the rules. You build the big thing.
Bored Elon had a tweet. He was like, building your IP on top of someone else's IP is risky. Building your IP on top of someone else's IP without asking for permission is ignorant. And clearly it looks like this was a highly risky bet to make, to be building on top of something like this and not working more closely with their team. And but I feel sad. We'll see what happens from here.
I mean, I've probably, the story of the first time that the kitty hats people showed us kitty hats, where you put hats on cats, on CryptoKitties. I like to tell the story where I was like, you can't fucking do this. You didn't ask us permission. And Dan, who's employee number 2 at OpenSea and actually built kitty hats with other people, was like, Mac, that's not what you said. You were thrilled. I showed this to you for the first time and you were so excited. And I'm like, oh, well, that's very cool of me. I like to pretend that I was like villainously angry, but apparently I was not. But to be cool, that bored Elon Musk tweet, I don't think will age that well, because the entire point of these metaverses that we're creating is that you do build without asking permission. If I have to ask permission, then this is not decentralized. That is literally the antithesis of decentralization.
I don't know, to push back on that, it says to build your IP on top of someone else's IP without asking for permission is ignorant. What we're doing in Web3 is making it so that it's very clear, like, Bored Apes doesn't own the individual IP, right? For those individual apes, I as the ape holder own it. So it would be ignorant to go and take like the whole, I mean, Yuga is in a lawsuit right now from somebody who's using their trademarks, and like, it's more about being accepting of that stuff and opening up the IP standards that people can build on it, not so much building your IP on somebody else's necessarily.
The other thing to remember about Minecraft is that I don't know what the median age of a Minecraft player is, but it's like not 18. Yeah. I assume it's quite young. My kid, who's 9, plays Minecraft. If my kid was like, Dad, I need some money to buy the NFT in Minecraft, I'd be like, nope. Not at all. You don't like
absolutely not.
You don't get to go degen learning the rules of the trade in Minecraft. Like this, in my opinion, for worse, but for better or worse, what we do, we've already talked about a bunch of times, is deeply economic. It's like disappointingly economically rational, economic incentives, greed driven. Like this is the space that we play in. And so if Minecraft wasn't Minecraft, but you took that same demographic and put something else on it, that's like saying, oh, we went, I don't know, like if Roblox has NFTs, I'm freaking the fuck out. That's like wildly inappropriate to give children economic things that are often either securities or lottery tickets. Like NFTs fall into those two categories in many cases, unfortunately. Don't put those in kids' hands.
But right now, kids are spending they're buying a bunch of Robux. They're spending a bunch of money in Roblox. They just have a different kind of ownership.
With no expectation of return. Of return.
Yeah, it's like making them little gambling addicts early or something.
Yeah.
That's a really
Roblox
interesting
is an arcade.
question. Yeah. All right. I think that's fascinating. I'm going to think more on that point. Because that is, in some ways, that is sort of the world we're moving in. Like we're talking about video games where there's economic value imbued in it. I mean, it gets me to this broader point that I've made a bunch on the show recently, which is like this stuff goes mainstream when the expectation stops being that you're going to get rich on it. Like I think a lot of this is more, these things will just subsidize our experiences. It'll make the experiences we're already having more affordable because suddenly we'll actually own it and we can make a little money back on it. But and therefore it subsidizes the experience. It's not like we're about to make a bunch of 8-year-olds millionaires because they have a cool skin on Fortnite. It's more that like, all right, they got a little money credited back into their system because they could sell the skin or whatever. That's an interesting question, though. How do we handle it when it comes to children?
COINSHIFT is a leading treasury management and infrastructure platform for DAOs and crypto businesses who need to manage their treasury operations. Every crypto org needs to manage their treasury, and COINSHIFT offers a simple, flexible, and efficient multi-chain treasury management platform built on top of the extremely secure Gnosis Safe. With COINSHIFT, your organization can go from primitive single-chain treasuries to expressive, flexible, multi-chain features such as global user management, global contracts, proposal management, and many other features that can be shared across an entire organization. COINSHIFT layers on powerful treasury management tools on top of the proven security of Gnosis Safe, allowing users to save time and reduce operational burdens and gas costs. COINSHIFT even has data tools like account reporting across the 7 chains on which it operates. Used by industry powerhouses such as Uniswap Grants, Balancer, Consensus, and Messari, COINSHIFT is speeding up the coordination and efficiency of the organizations that use it. In DeFi, you have to keep up with the frontier, and COINSHIFT makes that easy. So sign up at coinshift.xyz/bankless. Immutable X is the layer 2 platform for crypto gaming. Immutable offers massive scalability with up to 9,000 transactions per second and instant transaction confirmation. No more gas fees, no more waiting around for your transaction to clear. Immutable's zero knowledge rollup finally unlocks the world of crypto gaming. Immutable X is the only gas-free NFT minting platform with over 26 million NFTs minted, all with zero gas fees. With the power of Immutable, gaming developers don't also need to become smart contract developers. They just need to plug in to Immutable's API and instantly start unlocking the full potential of crypto assets inside of games. This is why world-class companies and projects have decided to deploy on Immutable X, like GameStop, Ember Sword, Planet Quest, Illuvium, TikTok, and many more behind the scenes. So start building your game on Immutable X today at immutable.com.
Okay. I'm so excited for us to get to this GameStop stuff, but I think we're going to hold it for just a few minutes more. I want to talk about some of the hacks we've seen in this space, and I want to talk about proof. Maybe let's do the hacks. Premint was hacked. Zeneca was hacked. Yuga Labs seemed to have warned about this, at least the Zeneca hack. They had a tweet out that said, our security team has been tracking a persistent threat group that targets the NFT community. We believe that they may soon be launching a coordinated attack targeting multiple communities via compromised social media accounts. Please be vigilant and safe. And it was literally the next day that or like within 24 hours, essentially, that Zeneca was hacked.
My only thought on this one, well, I probably have more. My first thought on this is I don't understand how much responsibility we're supposed to put on the people who got hacked. As in, everybody is getting hacked. And, just to be clear, for anybody following along at home, what happens when you get hacked is somebody takes over one of your accounts, creates links to web pages with Web3 functionality that look like one of your websites. People go connect their wallets to those, and then you steal all the shit. The world is not as simple as like binary. It's not black and white. It's not like, there's good guys and bad guys. I mean, objectively, the bad guy is the dickbag who stole all the money. We know that's the bad guy, sure. But how mad are you supposed to be at Zeneca? That guy is a victim in this story for all intents and purposes. He's a victim who, through his victimhood, had a lot more victims who arguably lost a lot more than he did. But some people get really mad at the person who got hacked. I'm like, man, literally they're the victim. They got hacked. And yet, I can imagine some metaphor about like walking across the road without looking. And then you get hit by a car and it causes a bunch of traffic. And everybody's like, oh man, that poor victim of the car. And you're like, oh no, they were like closed their eyes and walked across the road. They're kind of an asshole. They fucked up everybody's traffic because, and I don't know where you draw the line, because to be clear, I'll admit I need better security practices. I need better implementation of being safe for myself and my community. And I could totally be a victim of one of these fucking hacks. So am I the bad guy?
So Zeneca, initially the thinking was that it was an inside job from Twitter. Now it seems like there's two theories. It may have been somebody inside Twitter, or it's possible that he said, the other is a phishing attack on me where I gave access to an attacker to the extent that they could bypass my Google Authenticator 2FA. He had two-factor authentication on with a Google Authenticator. Like, that's pretty, it's not like just even like, hey, get a text message to your phone kind of 2FA. So he said it could have been a phishing attack. Zeneca said, this also seems unlikely to me, but I'm not arrogant enough to suggest this is impossible. Going forward, I am tightening my security even more, ordering YubiKey hardware devices for 2FA and for all social accounts for both myself and Zen Academy. I mean, I'm quite friendly with Zeneca. It seems so surprising to me that he fell prey to a phishing attack that like could bypass all this stuff, which does then leave the Twitter insider theory, which obviously I think then much less blame is on him if that's the case. I don't know. This one's a wild one to me because I think we really don't know what the origins of are yet. And Zeneca talked pretty publicly about how amazing the community response was. And I felt that. I mean, I got pinged, I feel like within like 30 seconds of this thing. Like, I was getting pinged on all sorts of channels saying Zeneca's been hacked. So the community really responded quickly. I mean, it was up for 13 minutes before it got shut down. Obviously, that's enough time for some real damage to be done. But the community really does rally itself around this stuff.
That his community, really inspiring to see them do that. Whatever culture he's built, whatever, very impressive.
Totally.
To me, I just think that's really cool that the people he's surrounded himself with on the largest scale are both, sort of clear of thought, powerful in their actions, kind throughout all of it. It's very good. I don't know how much whatever was stolen, money, NFTs, ETH, I don't know how much was stolen, but the idea of Twitter insiders, that needs to be a lot of money. Those people get paid very well to work at Twitter, better than any of us. They're risking going to jail for a long time. Yeah. There's back to it once again, theme of the day in the entire industry. What is the economic incentive? Maybe it's there.
So maybe it's a phishing attack. It's crazy. It's so wild to me. I I mean, maybe more will be revealed on this. Maybe we'll never get the full answer. On the Premint side, it was a file that was manipulated on Premint by a third party, and that offered a malicious wallet connect. What's ironic about this one is, I believe it was one of these like accept all, like it was one. Oh gosh, see, I wish I had this.
Oh, the MetaMask accept all transactions.
Yes, it was one of those, and the irony was that Brendan had tweeted about those.
Shit.
The day before and been like, this is a really thing that MetaMask should fix and they should highlight when
Oh, was he the guy who did the tweet about the like make it red and make it obvious? Oh my God. Unbelievable.
So he had literally done that, and then that was the exact tech and tool that was used against Premint the following day, which is just again wildly ironic. I can't find either of these tweets, but I'll find the one here it is. Isn't it kind of crazy that MetaMask doesn't display a giant red warning when a contract is requesting set approval for all, which is used by wallet drainers? It should be nearly impossible to accept that request. Instead, it looks identical to a normal request, like 5 minutes. And then he did a little mock-up of what they could do instead. So we'll put that tweet in the show notes. So yeah, ironic. All right. Well, anyways, the moral of this story is, of course, continue to stay safe out there. I have to say, like, I'm nervous now. Like, anytime, the wallet I have that has all my NFTs in it, there are times when I want to be in that wallet on OpenSea, and anytime I have to sign just the basic OpenSea, terms and approval thing to like approve going into that wallet, I get nervous. Like I double check, I'm like triple checking that I'm on OpenSea.io. Like I didn't always used to be this way, and I really am so skittish these days.
I'll tell you something quickly. 5 years ago, I was in Google's office, probably on my knees, begging them to allow us to put CryptoKitties on Android devices. We were like, wow, we've made this amazing thing. People love it. It's really awesome. And it's a fucking desktop app. Like in 2017, when I started working on desktop apps, I was embarrassed like a website to tell people. I was like, no, we moved into mobile 5-10 years ago. Well, not 10. We moved into mobile in like 2012, blah, blah, blah. Like, it was weird to be on desktop. So we're in Google, we're begging them. And eventually they said, listen, we know that you are a good actor. Like, we like you, Mac. You're a good guy. Your team is good people. There are all sorts of teams that look just like yours. There are all sorts of products that the silhouette of look identical to yours that are highly villainous. And we make rules for billions of people. So no, you cannot put CryptoKitties on our Android devices. And we never did. Back to the kids playing Minecraft. Like if you can get Zeneca, God, we shouldn't call it that, but if you can get hacked while playing Minecraft, and I haven't thought through like the exact UX implementation of if you can or can't, but if some kid's parents, nice kid, he's lucky, he's rich, his parents buy him $1,000 thing for Minecraft, and he's got this cool world in Minecraft, and then it gets hacked? That's not like okay for Microsoft. And can you imagine the shit they're gonna get? If my kid walks in here right now and says to me, Dad, somebody just stole my $1,000 NFT in Minecraft because I connected my wallet wrong, that's some table flipping scenarios, Yeah. So
yeah, it's a great point. Like if Zeneca, a highly sophisticated adult who's been doing this for over a year, can be in this situation, like anybody can, and certainly children. And I think that's a really smart point. Just because you mentioned the Android sitch, do you have any thoughts? Have you been tracking anything about this Solana phone? Not really.
I mean, HTC made a blockchain phone 5 years ago. Have you ever heard of it? Have I ever heard of it? Do I know what it's called?
I would argue
it doesn't matter.
My argument, because I think I've talked about it a little. I've talked about the show once briefly, but then since then, Bankless did an interview with the Solana Labs founders who are working on this project. And I would argue maybe that HTC was too early. We now have a state where you do have, people who are actively trading NFTs, and the mobile experience is bad, and we don't have the technology for this to be a mobile, like for Web3 to be really mobile first right now. It's a very desktop heavy experience. And Solana is not trying to build a phone that I think they said like they need like 50,000 people to buy this phone. Like they're not trying to, because that 50,000 people who are super Web3 native, who are spending money on NFTs is enough of enough to create the economic incentive for developers to start developing things in a mobile native way, and that's what they really want to encourage is activity in a mobile native way. Unlock those juices for developers to start thinking about what could we do, what would we build if this was really mobile native and mobile first, with the goal that down the line your Googles or whatever adopt these. They're doing this in an open source way. They're trying to make this they're not trying to build the next smartphone that's going to be universally used. They're trying to see what gets built and developed if people actually can think like this and build like this, and then try and red pill it that way or whatever, Trojan horse it into Google's Android. I think that's interesting. I like that.
Yeah, totally. That's cool. I was being, again, like shitty and salty or whatever.
No, your point is smart though. Your point is good. Yeah.
But yeah, no, if they're just trying to be the thin edge of the wedge, and the idea is that when Android has a deep Solana integration, Solana wins, and this is just a path to that. It's not to disrupt Android, it's to get the Solana network and other decentralized protocols into the mobile devices, then they're fucking heroes, and I salute them, and God bless you, and good luck, and Godspeed, and all that. Because I would love a mobile-first blockchain world. That would be fucking amazing. I've spent the last 15 years making mobile games.
Most of the world is like, you look at Africa, you look at like entire continents where they access the internet mobily. Like, it's like it already is a completely mobile world for many. Okay. Disney announces their 2022 Accelerator participants. I did not recognize many of these. It's FlickPlay, InWorld, Lockverse, Obsess, Red6, and then the one that we all know, which is Polygon. I don't know any of these other companies other than Polygon. Did you?
No, and I looked into this a little bit, and Accelerators is a weird model. Disney, you want to know? God, I'm gonna end up regretting this when Disney doesn't come along and buy my shit. But you want to know what I heard about the Disney Accelerator?
Tell me.
I heard it's awful for your business. That they single-handedly fucked up Sphero. You remember Sphero?
No. Tell me.
Sphero is a little round robot. It's a little circle, and you have a phone app, and you can control the little robot, and it rolls around, and it's just a circle, and it's really cool. And it was this like high-tech digital toy from 5 years ago, and then they got into the Disney Accelerator. I might be wrong about that, but they had a partnership with Disney that came out when Disney did the prequel movies for Star Wars, because it turns out that Sphero, if you put a little mushroom top on it, looks exactly like BB-8, and it's fucking adorable. And so they started making these branded Spheros that were little BB-8s, and suddenly you could have a little BB-8 running around your living room. And these were very interesting toys. Like, my daughter took a programming class at school when she was 7 or something to learn how to make the Sphero do what you want. It's very STEM focused. It's also fun. And I just heard horror stories about, again, it may not have been the Accelerator, but it was a partnership with Disney, and they got crushed by the mouse. They were unable to have self-determination. They had to do what the mouse wanted. And when you have to succeed at the scale of that kind of company, right? Like, hey, we're going to go make $30 million this year, said the startup. And wild applause exploded everywhere. But if you're too deeply ingrained with Disney and you're like, we're going to go make $30 million this year, they're like, oh, sorry, no. You have to add a zero or you have to go home. The blessing and the curse of working at Google is if you create a product, if you work on a product that can't make $100 million, you don't get to work on it. Like literally the baseline. Tinder told me the same shit years ago. Back in them when I'm begging on my knees in Google's office, I was trying to convince the head of product at Tinder to put NFTs into your Tinder profile. I'm like, oh yeah, they really represent who you are. It's really interesting. What punk you have, blah, blah, blah. And he liked NFTs. He invested in Dapper and shit. Like, he wasn't an unthoughtful guy. But again, he was like, for me to consider putting a product and feature, I have to look my boss in the eye and say, this is going to make us $100 million. Yeah. Your NFTs in 2018 are not going to make us $100 million. So the Disney Accelerator, I mean, like, it's fucking Disney, right? If the stars line up and you can have that army marching behind you, holy shit, you can take over anything in the whole world. But I feel like they often march over you, not behind you. You end up becoming like, well, that was good, man. Right? Very visual.
That was a good metaphor. That's interesting. I can't speak to that at all. I don't know, but that's interesting and make sense. My take on this has been, I think people are making a little bit too much of the Polygon partnership thing, as if like, oh, now it's like Disney is massive. They are playing everywhere. I had John Rogers on the show. I've had him on the show multiple times. I feel like I talk about him every time I get on a mic because I think he's brilliant. And, he was the head of franchise for Disney for many years. And he was on the show talking about how Disney should ultimately fork ZK Sync and have their own, L2. That's the Disney L2, which makes a lot of sense. And I know that they're talking to a bunch of L2s, and like, this is not, they're going to spread their seed for what it's worth, right? I think across a bunch of different players here because they're Disney and it's too early to just commit to one place. So I think it's cool, and I think that it's great for Polygon, and I'm glad they have this partnership. But this isn't like an exclusivity thing where that's it. This is where Disney's now building for the rest of Walt's time.
Strong agree. The other weird thing, and like, this is just theme. We had two themes of today: economic alignment and shitty old guy Mack. But shitty old guy Mack remembers when Quora. You remember Quora?
I know website? A nonprofit named Quora, which is definitely not what you're thinking of. Is it a nonprofit?
No. Quora is a website where people ask questions.
Oh, of course. Yeah. Like Quora.
Yeah. Not like KO. Quora.
I still land on Quora when I have weird questions sometimes, and I end up in a Quora feed.
Well, I mean, for the kids following along at home, Quora was the most exciting website for the 2 years that it came out. It was going to revolutionize information sharing. It was fucking crazy in the post-blog era, early social media days, that you could go ask a question like, how does Facebook think about growth? And Zuck would come in and write 3 paragraphs that were like really insightful. They somehow built this incredible culture of contributors just telling you the truth. And some people built amazing reputation and brand for themselves by answering good Quora questions. You could find amazing things. They used to print a book called The Best Quora Answers of the Year, and it was fucking exceptional. It was one of the finest things to read on earth every year. It was like, how to land a plane on an aircraft carrier. What's that like? How to kill an assassin. How to rewrite a Linux kernel. How to bake blueberries. I don't know, just weird, incredible, crazy shit. Point is, Quora was going to be everything. Everybody was excited. Quora was the future, the new social media, Pinterest before Pinterest, all sorts of shit. And then they lost the momentum. And eventually, after years of being in existence, they joined Y Combinator. And everybody was like, what? Y Combinator is for the 2 little Stanford dropouts to do their thing and get their little Paul Graham hand job and a little bit of money and go fucking make their business. Sorry, that was probably inappropriate. We could edit that part out.
We love a good metaphor. We love a good descriptive analogy.
Well, it was Y Combinator, I'm pretty sure Reddit went through that shit. Airbnb went through that shit. It turned little business into big businesses and wild success. And here's a big business coming in, and they acknowledged it was weird. Everyone knew it was weird. YC didn't get the same 7% they always take. They had a custom arrangement because this was a company that had to probably at that point raise hundreds of millions of dollars. But it was interesting, and they tried to pretend it was fun or could be cool. It wasn't. It was bad. It was shitty. And so all of this back to Polygon Disney, I have the slightest smell of that to this, where I'm like, you you don't belong in accelerators, even Disney accelerators. You're fucking Polygon. That's probably a multi-billion-dollar network. And should you take an investment from Disney? Sure. Should you sign deals with Disney? Sure. But the accelerator thing on both sides feels like weird PR, and then makes shitty old man Mack be like, really?
I agree with you on this, actually. I do. I feel like I've pushed back on some of your cynicism up to this point, but I agree. Seeing the announcement, just all along, I'm like, people are so excited about this, and it doesn't feel like the proper reaction to me entirely. Not that it's bad, but there's something that just feels a little funky about it. So anyhow, I like I like that metaphor. I like the story we got out of that metaphor. And I mean, we'll see what happens. Look, I mean, again, I obviously want everyone in this space to succeed because it only we're early enough that like it makes sense for everyone to be collaborative, because it's the rising tide is going to lift all the boats in this space. So I think that's exciting, but I don't think we should overstate what this means for the future of any of this. Okay, I think we are finally going to hit the point I've been excited about. I feel like I've probably been overhyping this, but it's to talk about this GameStop Marketplace. And have you tracked anything about this? Do you know anything about this? Should I give it to you from the start? Like, where are you at?
I mean, I know that they did more volume in like a day than Coinbase has done ever.
Yes.
So shit. Oh my God.
Yeah.
And I know that GameStop has a history of the games industry. I know that everybody who is playing console games the last 10 years fucking hates GameStop for ripping them off on the secondary sales prices and the like relationship to NFTs and this kind of thing. The fact that, for example, people who make games fucking hated GameStop because GameStop would just keep buying and reselling the same games, making $6 every time, and the creator of the game never got another penny. Every major game developer and publisher in the console industry fucking loathe retail gaming. That's why they like digital. Except, this is really interesting, actually. We went from retail, where the retailer kept buying and selling from the consumer, fucking the consumer by paying no price and giving nothing to the creator, to going to digital, which fucked the retailer, but also the consumer, because they couldn't resell their shit. And so now all of the money and all of the powers in the developer and the publisher. And now NFTs are like, no, if I bought the shit, I own the shit. Wow, this is actually really good. This is truly where the power left the hands of the retailer, left the hands of the publisher, went to the hands of the consumer. The NFT can buy and sell what they want. But that's all kind of philosophical. I'm going to shut the fuck up and let you tell us about GameStop.
No, I love that. I think that's a great tee up here. So I do think we have to start like last year, and we're going to start with the GME Wall Street bets run up that took down Melvin Capital. I'm sure the audience remembers this because I imagine there's a decent amount of overlap between people who listen to an NFT podcast and who were like glued to their screens watching GME beat the short sellers. And I mean, look, at the end of the day, that's not the way you should be trading stocks, and you'll end up wrecked that way. But it was fun for a little while to watch a subreddit basically take down a massive hedge fund. Sorry to everybody who lost their jobs and money in that, but let's be real, it was fun. Okay, so if you remember, maybe don't, but I feel like the initial kernel, the initial theory of why people got so bullish on GameStop was because Ryan Cohen, who had been the founder of Chewy, which is like the online pet store, whatever, had started buying up a significant stake in the company and ultimately got a board seat. So he bought up like I think 12% of GameStop and then got a board seat. And part of that was because he'd been like ranting at the board for a while that GameStop needed to go more digital and get more digitally savvy, and they like were only half paying attention to him, so he kept buying up more of the company. And then ultimately he got a board seat, and two other like ex-Chewy employees, senior people, got board seats on GameStop, and so they ended up making up like a third of the board. And so I think there was maybe some paper Ryan Cohen had written, like his whole theory of the case of GameStop going digital. And anyways, people were very excited about this. And that was the initial nugget that spurred the, like, we're going to get bullish on GameStop because there's this whole business model, and Ryan Cohen, who's great, is going to take them digital. That got, I think, at points very much mocked by the institutional investor class, probably for good reason, because it, by the time it was whatever the final numbers it was trading at was clearly a hyper overreaction to like, maybe Ryan Cohen will take this company digital. But I bring that up because from what I'm understanding, that is actually the vision that they're really trying to play out, and they're taking the NFT digital world very seriously. So for some context, I mean, GameStop really does have this massive gaming footprint. I don't come from a gaming background at all, which I say regularly on this site. I think I've probably been to a GameStop once or twice in my whole life. So I really did not know their like tremendous position in the gaming world. I think it's something like they have nearly 5,000 stores globally. They have 50 million loyalty members in the United States, which is just so big to me.
That's
but maybe that number
giant number.
Does sound fucking huge.
Yeah.
And then
that's 1/6 of America.
It's huge. I mean, maybe I've got bad numbers here, but I got this from a pretty reliable source. And then they have the number 1 market share for like special collectible game sales. So like they sell, people who want to go buy, some game from the 80s. I don't know, maybe I don't have this perfect. So like they already have a little bit of an audience for that. And GameStop is known for like you go in the store and it's like the latest Halo release and, they're pumping it up and it's, you can go and, blah, 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 blah. Yes. And so they do have these, very deeply entrenched relationships with all your AAA game studios, like all the game studios, like this was their distribution partner for many, many years. It seems like, and the optimistic case would be like fixing the past mistakes that you just laid out. But like that is now their vision for this new phase is they're launching this digital marketplace right now on Loopring. I think they're going to IMX. It should be sometime next month as well. I think they're going to have places both, but where they are really partner with, they've been tweeting about Illuvium, the GameStop NFT, like Twitter account has been tweeting a bunch about like Illuvium and things where they're creating these bespoke like website pages for like Illuvium games for whatever insert. I don't have that specifically, but like for these games, so they can almost do in the digital realm what they've been doing in the physical realm, which is like hype up these drops, really give marketing power to games they're excited about, whatever, on and on and on. And they have like a team of, I think, like 30 people that are working on this to really transition the business increasingly to this world. One theory that I heard, I was talking to somebody who used to work at Twitch, to your like Amazon Prime account, and then you would have this Twitch Prime thing, and you would get like gaming skins, and you would get these things, and then if you're Amazon, you just have all this data about who these people are in their gaming lives and what they buy on Amazon Prime. And this person was speculating very much without knowing for sure, but like that they could see GameStop doing something similar here where like they combine they've got these GameStop Pro memberships and then you combine that and you get NFT releases and now they have information about what you're buying on the NFT side and what you buy in the gaming world. So all of this, like, and the fact that they've been so successful to me feels really exciting because it feels like an example of like me really starting to see the future of blockchain gaming in a way that like I haven't fully been able to picture it before, and seeing such a legacy institution feel like they're making a really legitimate and big bet in this space, I think is really cool. And I think it's bigger than I've heard people talking about. So we'll see where it all lands, like, kind of shakes out. But that's what I've been hearing about it. And that's sort of my take on it.
The question for you is around verticalized marketplaces. So OpenSea is the place to go get every single NFT. And I saw somebody saying that they thought maybe GameStop was doing better than Coinbase because domain specificity, which reflects kind of the in-store experience that you're talking about. Like I go to a GameStop and then Master Chief, which is the Halo guy, is like 6-foot cardboard in front of me, and there's 600 Funko Pops on the back wall, and there's the silver steel case edition of the new Call of Duty, and it's very shiny, and I don't necessarily... so in the old days, we used to argue about apps. Oh God, what was it called? Constellation apps. Like for a while, there was a Facebook app. And then Facebook started pulling everything out of the app. And we had Messenger, which was different than Facebook groups. I don't even think they had groups at the time, which was different than the Facebook fucking marketplace. And so we called it like the great, God, I'm getting this wrong, but it was the great there was this concept of constellation apps, probably honestly another Paul Graham blog post. What up, Paul? Fuck. But that was like, TechCrunch was writing about that only for 6 months. And then 2 years later, who? Fred over at Union Square. Those kinds of guys, they were writing with us. And then, 6 months later or a year later, it was like, no, it's the unbundling. That was the unbundling. And then we were rebundling and everything was coming back together. And we didn't want constellation apps anymore. We wanted super apps, and everybody was copying WeChat in China. And I don't know that we ever landed, because WeChat does everything for everybody. Like you need one ring to rule them all. I don't know if we ever settled on the best answer as a sort of technology culture group or whatever, but do you, regardless of GameStop in particular, do you see room for these verticalized marketplaces of NFTs, or do you think that's silly?
I've thought about this a bunch, and I feel like the smart money I've talked to is all very convinced that we're going to have these verticalized marketplaces. I have two things to say on this, right? So I have found it interesting because I feel like I had Jake Bruckman on here, who's the CEO of Coin Fund, which is like a big they invest in protocols and NFTs and whatever. He's been in the space since like 2013 doing this stuff. And they were an early investor in Rarible. Rarible has their like white label service so that individual NFT projects, like anybody can build their specific marketplace, and they seem to be making a big bet on that. And Jake really made a compelling case to me about why like it is all going to be these specific marketplaces, and it's not going to be just like generalized marketplaces. G Money, same thing. He came on his Admit One project. Part of it is a marketplace that's like a curated marketplace of like his stuff, and he seemed very compelled that we were going to have these very individualized kind of marketplaces. I've found it interesting to compare that to the fact that OpenSea has been so dominant, and other than maybe buying one-on-one art or whatever, you go to OpenSea for everything, and it seems very generalized. I do think it makes sense that as we have more and more things be NFTs, that we probably see these individual marketplaces that can really gear the experience towards what you want. Like gamers are going to want different things when they're searching for their gaming NFTs than you're going to want as an art collector, the things you're going to search for, the things you're going to filter for. So those are the arguments that make me feel like it will be verticalized. What I think is really interesting though, and I hope I don't speak out, I hope I get this right, but Immutable X has something called the open order book. So if you're on IMX and you post on any one of the marketplaces, it populates on the others. Now with something like so I know GameStop is a part of that. I don't know that like if you post a piece of art, it doesn't populate on the GameStop marketplace. But the point is, if you post like a gaming asset to the GameStop marketplace, it'll populate in the other just generalized marketplaces on Immutable X. And if you post a gaming asset on a generalized marketplace, it'll populate on the GameStop marketplace. So I actually think we can maybe have it all, right? Where we can have these specific marketplaces when you want to go and have a very specific shopping experience for a certain type of good, but you can also have those assets existing on generalized marketplaces. If we get to a point where open order books are the common standard, or if enough of the trading is happening on L2s. I mean, this gets us to this broader question around like, will we live in this omni-chain world, or will like ETH be dominant, and will all these transactions be happening on L2s and all these things? But the open order book concept, which again, GameStop will be a part of being on IMX, I think is really interesting.
And back to our old friend standards, works because of standards. Like, to be honest, I find it confusing when I hear people talk about NFT. Sometimes they're like, oh, it's only a Nifty gateway. Like, sorry, what do you mean? Like, it's on Ethereum. It is but they're not wrong in that everybody knows that to get that NFT, you go to that website. And I'm like, okay, but you missed the whole fucking point of what we're doing here, which is that this is permanent, that this is interoperable, that all we should do is turn filters on and off to see the content we on. But all of those filters are just different windows onto the same real world outside, which is the blockchain. I can look at this window over here. I can look at this window here. But either way, I'm looking outside to see what is real and true and permanent. And so, I mean, that sort of makes a ton of sense, to be honest. The other thing we're thinking about, I don't know how fair this comparison is. I'm sure OpenSea would be pissed, but Craigslist ain't dead. Craigslist makes $60 million a year to this day. I think OpenSea's made like $60 million on their best weekend, to be clear. Not a year, but still, like, there's some of these images that go around that are like, oh, the great debundling of Craigslist. And it's got sex is over here and apartments is here and all the different cars are here and all the different things you can buy. It's like, here's this dedicated site that does $10 million in revenue for that one particular thing. It's like, oh, that's cool. You're right. Like, each one of those has been pulled apart. Somebody made a big business out of it. But I've never heard of 9 or 10 of those websites. If I wanted to solve those problems, I mean, I haven't been to Craigslist in years, so I guess I'm not being totally genuine.
But Amazon is a good example. But I think it's interesting, right? Like Amazon's great, like, and that was the counter I gave to Jake Bruckman. Was I was like, well, look at what about like an Amazon where you come everywhere? But the interesting thing with Amazon is they did start specialized, right? Like they very much started with, they were the bookstore. Like they started with books, and then they have over time expanded to be the everything store. I don't know
literally everything, including cloud storage.
I mean, it's wild. Like, it's funny because I've been reading a book about the history of Amazon, the company, and I'm halfway through it. I've been trying to, it's one of these books that I've been trying to read for I feel like 2 months, and I just keep getting distracted with other things. But it's notorious for being a company that just spent, that was not profitable for many, 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 many years, and then like, turned profitable. And I feel like spawned that whole model of spend, grow. Profit doesn't really matter. And I feel like I had this impression that like, I guess what I'm getting at is like, I think Amazon also just got so lucky. Like if it wasn't for like Amazon Web Services, like, no, their business model doesn't work. Like it actually doesn't, it doesn't make sense to have same day delivery. Like that actually doesn't work. The reason they can get away with it is because they have like money machines with like Amazon Web Services and these other things. And if they hadn't found that, like their core business doesn't actually make sense, which is fascinating.
Yeah.
Anyhow.
Yeah, I forget the numbers, but ridiculous percentages of their revenue are from AWS. And also a ridiculous percentage of the internet is sitting on AWS. Like it's very disappointing how much of our traffic, commerce, websites, everything requires Amazon to be having a good day.
That is scary. I was listening to a podcast as I fell asleep last night, so I don't have all the details, but it was talking about backing up the internet, and that like we actually have a woefully poor, we do not have the internet backed up. And there's like one guy somewhere like working on trying to back up the internet. But like to your point, like if AWS servers went down like permanently, like it would be disastrous. And like we don't actually have a lot of this information in like multiple places and safeguarded, which of course all of this being a huge argument for blockchain and many nodes and decentralization. So anyhow. Okay, I think that covers it. I mean, a couple maybe quick things. You had the Bill Murray NFTs dropped. It was an initial 85 that were dropped. They pumped pretty hard after they were released. This was on Coinbase NFT, speaking of it. But there's supposedly going to be 1,000 total coming. Interesting in the sense that it's a celebrity drop that seems to be doing well and sort of defying the odds where we haven't had the celebrity NFT drops do too well recently.
They seem very classy. They seem very tasteful. Here's the thing that I don't get. From what I understand about them, they're really like little testaments to moments in his life. Stories of the crazy shit he does, movies he's been in, big parts of his life. That's really fucking cool. I think it's a really authentic, neat way to bring Bill Murray to NFTs, kind of captures the best of both those crazy worlds. I realize he's led a wild, full, and rich life. But how the fuck are you going to have 1,000 moments that are meaningful in your life captured in NFTs? Like, they're specifically not PFPs with variations, just like, oh, look, he's got 3D glasses on this one and scuba gear on in this one. And so how the shit do you get to 1,000 of those? But it doesn't matter. They look, I mean, high five, Bill Murray. I saw everybody trying to give him shit because, he did the buy a punk playbook before dropping the NFT and, like, get a better NFT advisor. But the dude's making, like, pretty fucking cool art, on brand, tastefully, using a technology that some of us love. What up, Bill Murray?
Yeah. No, I said that on a Twitter space the other day. We were talking about some of the celebrity drops, and we were praising Sia's drop because I think Sia's drop is cool, and she's released these little stems of music, and it sounds like she's going to use them to make music down the line. And I was saying what I appreciated about Sia was like, she's been tweeting about this, and in this, it's, I think since like December of last year was one of the first tweets I saw of it. Like, I feel like she's actually authentically engaging with the space. And Bill Murray, love him, but like it was very much like a week before he launches something, he like bought several NFTs, and it felt like that was sort of his nod to the space. And it's like, well, that doesn't really feel like you're like really in it, but whatever, good for him. Kingship also finally launched. That's the Bored Ape music group. It's Jimmy's Apes. It's a Universal Music Group back project. It's 22, gosh, now it's gonna bug me that I don't know the name of like the label within PM, 22 PM, something like that. You know what I'm talking about?
Yeah. But I also don't know the name.
So anyway, they've launched a band, and they're gonna have this whole storyline around these 4 apes who are in this band, and so it's like this fictionalized. There's a narrative component to this that I think is cool. I'm not entirely clear on what you get as a holder of these NFTs. I know it's funding this project, funding this band, whatever. I guess you'll get early access to things and drops and music. I actually was on the mint list, and I just totally spaced and didn't mint, which is the story of my life. I've been traveling all week, and I saw the email, and then here you go. So but yeah, it's a cool new use of NFTs and IP and like immersive storytelling. That's what I got. You got anything else you want to flag, Mac?
I just want to point out that everybody who wants the, IP ownership and creative fucking control of their NFT, you're not fucking Jimmy. Stop fucking these projects up by insisting that you have IP ownership rights, making it incredibly hard for your project owner to go negotiate real deals, get good shit done for your community, because the number of people who've actually done anything with those creative rights, like things that matter, is fucking Jenkins and Jimmy. That's it. Somebody should get them to yell at me on Twitter. They will anyways.
Wait, this is so interesting. So your perspective is like, screw it. Like, don't give these rights to these individual holders so that
you're making it impossible to negotiate real deals. It's like you're telling me as the project manager, hey, I want you to get in a race and win that fucking race. By the way, I'm tying your shoelaces together because Netflix won't do deals if you don't very cleanly own the fucking rights. And now you're like, oh, give me those fucking rights and go sell it to Netflix. Everybody who's like, I insist I have the rights, doesn't do anything with them. But they also hinder the people who might do something with it, the project runner, from being able to do the thing that they should be doing. You fuck yourself because you're not Jimmy. And
so
Jimmy's
this is interesting. So I've been
shit.
trying to put together a panel for a little while now. That's DC Investor, Jimmy, Zeneca, like the CCO diehards versus CCO critics. It's actually been surprisingly hard to find CCO critics outside of just like the art side of things. Jimmy's one of them, which is ironic because you're taking it the next step further. You're like, forget even CCO, like fuck like giving these rights at all. We had a date set, then it kind of got upended. So like I haven't been able to make this panel happen, but I really want to because I think it would be a fantastic debate. And so I'm trying to nail down Jimmy on it. And so maybe we have you join. I think I had the former legal counsel for Lucasfilm was interested in hopping on and kind of providing the like trad Hollywood perspective on it of like, I think making the case that you're kind of making of like, if it's CC, like what you need the sort of a central visionary and et cetera, et cetera. But maybe we'll have you join this panel and you can take the most extreme perspective of all, which is like give nobody rights.
There's only one problem with this, which is I ain't smart enough to debate with people.
Oh, that's not true.
Like Jimmy's very informed.
Jimmy would be largely on the irony of this is Jimmy is like more on your side in some ways. Like Jimmy was going to be the anti-CCO guy, CC0 guy. So you guys would actually be sort of on the same team and then just debating the nuances of like where to draw the line on those rights. I think it's I think you'll have exceptions to it, right? Like you obviously have Bored Apes wrapped by Siri and going out there and getting deals and people sort of accepting that they have these other, whatever, there are these conditions, but the exception does not make it the rule where like everybody, Hollywood now writ large and Netflix writ large or whatever is going to be just cool with like creating content when the IP is fragmented like that. And I think it's a point that's not talked about enough.
And like 10 years from now, they probably will be. Yeah. Because Jimmy's blazing the trail, because guys out there doing it for apes. Like I'm not saying that the future can't allow for this. I think the future will. This is the Web3 decentralized world we want to live in. Yeah. But today, if you're in the fucking Discord yelling when moon, but also giving my fucking IP rights, you're like putting holes in buckets and then dumping water in it and wondering why your fucking shit is dry.
I talked to somebody at a studio, a fairly big studio, that was saying that they were in talks with some projects, some, fairly known projects. And these projects are like, we want to be Marvel, and the studio is like, why would we help you be Marvel when we don't own these rights? Like what incentive is there for us to like help you make this happen? Why would we do that? So it's definitely a very real challenge. Okay, well, this is great. Mac, you're the best. Thanks for coming on. I'm sure we'll have you on again at some point. And any parting words?
Be nice to each other.
Oh, I love it. Thank you so much for watching this episode of Overpriced JPEGs. If you liked this conversation, if you liked this episode, please go ahead and hit subscribe. It helps me out, it helps the show out, and it means you will get alerts and updates when we post new content. Thanks again.